This episode is sponsored by my friends at Magic Mind. Hello, everybody. My name is Daniel, and this is Engineering Success, the Engineering Career Podcast, the ultimate destination for topics about engineering careers. Hope you guys are doing well today. My name is Daniel. I am your host. As you can see, I'm rocking my Dallas Mavericks jersey because it's the middle of playoff season, and as a person from the DFW Metroplex, I gotta rep the Mavs. The Stars are going on. Let's just forget about how the Rangers are doing right now. But I'm recording it today. It's Mother's Day, May 12th, and I'm recording this. And if you're watching live, then thank you so much for tapping in. And if you're not watching live and you're listening to recording, yes, I do go live for some episodes of the podcast. It's pretty random, but if you're subscribed to me on YouTube, then you'll get a notification when I go live. So make sure that if you're not subscribed to me yet on YouTube, that you subscribe and you get notifications when I go live on YouTube. Exciting developments going on today. I have a new microphone, as you can see here. I have the Electro Voice RE20. It's kind of like the premier studio DJ microphone, in my opinion. It's the coolest microphone there is out there, and it's perfect for people that speak loudly like me. And so if you like the audio, let me know. If the audio has gotten worse, then I probably just haven't figured out how to use it yet. So those of you that are listening, please give me some feedback on how the audio sounds as I tweak the audio of the podcast. Okay, well, before we get into the rest of the pod, I need to give a couple shout outs. First of all, shout out to John Ott and Leroy Jenkins. Thank you so much for being top tier supporters of the podcast. You too can be a top tier supporter and get a shout out at the beginning of every episode of the podcast for $10 a month. It really helps me out, helps me keep my website up and running, www.engringsuccess.com, where you can see updates on all things engineering success and get links to all the different things that we're doing here at Engineering Success. You can also email me through that domain at daniel@engringsuccess.com, where you can ask me questions if you're interested in being on the podcast, you have a question you want to have answered on the podcast, or if you want to be added to my Discord server, which is a chat community for people that are engineers, aspiring engineers, every phase of the engineering life cycle. We have different sub chat threads for those topics, and you can ask questions and then have your questions answered by a community of engineers that are there to help you become the best version of yourself as an engineer. Very exciting development there. Speaking of exciting developments, I don't know if you guys know this about me, but if you know this, you know me. I worked in the field and I've worked all over, and I've worked some crazy hours and picked up a habit of drinking a lot of coffee. And being a working dad, I work a traditional job. I work 9 to 5. I also take evening shifts at night, so I definitely sometimes need a little bit of a pick me up. But coffee obviously comes with a headache and all that kind of stuff that comes along with it if you're just doing coffee. So that's why I was super excited when the folks at Magic Mind reached out to me and asked me to do their 7-day challenge for their mental performance shot. And I have continued that challenge since the first 7 days. Magic Mind is, for those of you that don't know, a mental performance shot that helps get you focused, mentally clear, motivated, and productive, all while reducing your stress with mushroom nootropics and adaptogens, plus more than 100% of your daily vitamin C and D recommended amounts per bottle. Their formula was created with the input of a scientific advisory board of doctors and medical researchers with more than 200 scientific studies completed over more than 10 years. That's a lot of science going into that recipe. Magic Mind uses the cognizin and citicoline, the best nootropics on the market, and nanoencapsulation technology, which helps you absorb the ingredients faster. Now, there's no quick fixes in life. I know that. So I've been taking Magic Mind for not just the first 7 days, but now a few weeks. And I have noticed that I haven't had the same urge to get over my caffeine crash with yet another cup of coffee. In fact, I've been equally as productive, in fact, maybe even more productive. And I've gone from 7 to maybe 1 or 2 cups of coffee a day when I'm working, which is a really positive development for me because, let's be honest, there's a lot of things that come along with drinking a lot of coffee. I've enjoyed the taste too. It's delicious. And it's probably because they use the highest grade organic ceremonial grade matcha. how many of you guys are matcha lovers. I know my wife, Madeline, is a matcha lover, and they have mushrooms that are organically grown here in the US of A in California. Now, if you want to try Magic Mind for yourself, you have a limited offer here that you have on the podcast that gets you up to 48% off your first subscription or 20% off a one-time purchase with the code DanielD20 at checkout. You can claim it at magicmind.com/DanielD. If you don't like it, just let them know within 100 days. Yeah, 100 days. And they'll refund you, no questions asked. You can find them at your local Sprouts, Erewhon, or Central Market. But the best place to get this discount is at magicmind.com/DanielD and using my code DanielD at checkout. So make sure you do that and support my friends over at Magic Mind. All right. Well, we've done the intro. I've given you an update on my life. This was my first Mother's Day. Safe to say that I killed it. For those of you that were wondering, I absolutely killed Mother's Day this year. We did the little handprint on a shrinky dink, Mother's Day 2024. Awesome. Took the family to a farm, check, and got my wife some flowers and a nice little sweatshirt as well. So safe to say that I killed Mother's Day. Hope you guys killed Mother's Day, those of you that celebrate. Yeah, it's a good development here. All right. Well, hey, we'll take a quick little breather and then we'll get into the first section of the podcast, LinkedIn Lunatics. All right. And we are back here, Engineering Success, episode 61. Thank you so much for listening. And we are going to read our first question of the podcast, which is LinkedIn Lunatics. They say, caption it is, please be a world champion if possible. Please be a world champion if possible. Now, what could they be so upset about somebody saying, please be world champion if possible? Well, let's just tap in. And sorry for the Zoom. I'll click in. There we go. While optional, we think it would be cool if you could run a 5K in under 25 minutes. We have 2 or 3 people that can do this, but we have a couple of Ironman athletes, including Max, and a few marathoners and a mountain biker who does 80-plus mile races. Lots of yogis, too. Solve a Rubik's Cube in under a minute. Compete in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Climb Mount Kilimanjaro. Be a world champion in anything. Youngest yo-yo world champion in history, worked with us for years. Start your own business. Max did, and one guy owns some photography business. The rest of us are all working on it. A snake shot, foosball. Google it, no spinning. And then it goes on and listing requirements. So they said, while optional, we'd think it'd be cool if you could do, and they list all these really cool things, accomplishments that their employees have. And somebody posted this on LinkedIn Lunatics, implying that this is a crazy thing to put in a job post. And on the scale of 1 to 10, lunatic score, I give this about a 1. It is not lunatic at all. I think it's really cool that they want to highlight the unique interests and skills and talents of their people. And it just shows that it's a community, a working community where they care about your personal interests. And they want people to also pursue cool, fun things outside of work. And if that turns you off, then maybe you're not a good fit for their work environment there. So I would say not a lunatic post at all. That's pretty cool. That it's a PR company. I see it looks like a PR, public relations account coordinator, so remote job, and they take interest in their people's hobbies. So maybe not a lunatic post, but hey, if you think it's a lunatic post, then maybe that's just not the work environment for you, and that's okay. But no, this week's LinkedIn Lunatic post is not a lunatic post. Well, look at me being positive. All right. Well, that was this week in LinkedIn Lunatics. Let's get into the interview question of the week. They go on to say, I make $30 an hour, around $65,000 annual, and I got an interview for a job that has a target base salary of $100,000 to $130,000 per year. When the salary range question comes up, how do I answer? As the title states, 29 male. Been hourly my entire professional career, and I found a job that I'd be perfect for, and the pay would be life-changing. How can I answer the preferred salary question? I'd love 130K, but I worry if I go for the max, it would take me out of the running for the role. And what if they ask me how much I make now? Thanks all. All right, so here's what I'd say. You'd love 130, and if you worry if you go for the max, it would take you out of the running for the role. What I'd say is hey, I noticed that the base salary range is $100,000 to $130,000 per year. And based on my experience and qualifications, I think that I would qualify to be near the top end of that range, and that would be an acceptable starting salary for me. If you want 130 and may say, hey, I like the range, and I think that I would be suited to fall in at the top of that range. And I mean, they're the ones that posted the range, and you saying, hey, I like the range. I think I'm a good fit, and I think I'd fit at the top end of the range, and then that kind of necessarily doesn't really, I don't say, doesn't say, hey, I need to have the top end salary, but it shows that that is your expectation, and you'd be excited about the top end salary, and you think you'd be a fit. And if they ask you how much you make now, say, you could you could say that my compensation is competitive, and if you get me at the top end of the range, then that would be within the range that I would expect. Or you could say, no, no, the current amount of money I make is just proprietary, so I can't really share that for you. I'll tell you this though. Interesting factoid I learned recently. If your payroll provider for your current employer is ADP or another payroll provider that reports to Equifax, which is one of the credit bureaus, there's a thing called the worker number, TWN. And if you haven't heard of the worker number, you got to look it up. You opt into this whenever you opt into your payroll providers and all that kind of stuff. And what it is I looked up mine, and I could see an entire detailed history of every single paycheck that I've received from every single employer my entire career, which was just crazy to me. I didn't know that that was a thing. I didn't know that's available. And turns out that employers can actually look that up on your background report, and they can actually see what you've currently made. So maybe if you're worried about them looking that up as part of the negotiations, then you can actually contact Equifax and ask them to freeze or to not post that information. And I looked at mine, and I didn't see that listed. That I could see who pulled it, and it was just some credit card companies that had pulled mine. But if an employer had pulled it, then they would have gotten to see exactly what I made per week. Now that didn't. There's a lot of other details, like was I making per diem, what kind of income was I making. I mean, there's a lot of context that's missing there, but they can find out a pretty good detail about what you're pulling in, at least income wise, on a pay stub. So yeah, very interesting stuff. But again, the question was, when the salary range question comes up, how do I answer? I'd say I noticed that the range was this. I think that's a fair range, and I think that based on my experience, you'll see that I might be qualified for the top end of that range. So it just kind of sets the expectation, shows that you like the range, but you're not going to take yourself out of the running for the role. And then if they ask you how much you make now, say, I make enough that I make a respectable amount of money. And again, I'm interested in the range that you've posted. I've interviewed for jobs before, and they haven't asked me what I currently make, which is might have been my experience. But people may ask that, and or also you could just respond and saying, hey, I'm not going to share that with you, and that's proprietary. I've also seen people say, hey, just make up a number. Say, hey, 130, that's what I'm making. But then you're gonna have to answer the question of, oh, then why are you leaving? And then it just spirals. So that's something to keep in mind if you take that route. But yeah, I would just say I don't feel comfortable sharing that with you. And then lock up your TWN so they can't look it up for themselves. Something to keep in mind. All right. Well, that was this week's interview question of the week. I hope you found those comments insightful. All right. Next question is titled Private University College Questions. Private Universities for Engineering. Private Universities for Engineering. For those of you that went to a private university for engineering, was it worth the extra expense? What value adders, if any, do you experience? How has your alumni network worked out for you? That's a great question, and really relevant to me, because guess what? I went to a private university for engineering. Now, I was fortunate enough to be in a situation where my parents were able to pay for my college. I had that privilege coming out of school. My parents that was a big focus for them, is to be able to pay for my college and my brother's college. And I'm really grateful for that. And that was my circumstance. And it worked out that it would cost me about the same based after scholarships to attend the public university in my state, which is the University of Texas or Texas A&M, or attend the university I did attend, which was Trinity University in San Antonio, which is a small liberal arts school in San Antonio, Texas, that has an engineering program. And the reason why I went is I wanted to have smaller class sizes, and I wanted all my classes to be taught by professors that were, actual professors and not TAs, just because that was the learning environment that I felt like I would succeed best in. I feel like in any other environment, I don't know, I'm easily distractible. Let's just put it that way. And I didn't like the idea of being a really small fish in a big pond. I really wanted to have that attention, the smaller class sizes, and that community. And was it worth it? I think that my career would have probably turned out fine. I probably would have finished engineering school, gotten a job, started a good career without having gone to that school. But that being said, I did enjoy the smaller class sizes. My largest class was 70 people, and that was Gen Chem. Other than that, most of my classes were 15 to 35 people. I even had an elective that was as small as 3 people, and it was very hands-on. And all my classes were taught by professors. None of them were taught by TAs. All my professors had office hours. My advisor was a tenured professor at the university, Dr. Nichols. Thank you so much. I was able to get involved in a bunch of clubs, and I had a really, really good experience. And then the alumni network, it worked out okay. Trinity's alumni network isn't necessarily a massive engineering alumni network, but through my connections with other alumni, I mean, there were alumni of mine that ended up working at my employer that I worked for after graduation. And then that alumni did help me connect into my employer. So it helped a little bit. I'd say that the network that I had at my small little private school is definitely not as big as like the A&M network, where you just flash the Aggie ring and you quote unquote get a job, and it's not as big as the UT alumni network. And but I mean, it served me just about as well as I expected my alumni network to serve me. It's served me in the sense that there are people that are in my network that I know. None of them, I haven't used my alumni network to get a job. I haven't needed to. I haven't needed that now. Maybe it'll come in handy for me. But yeah, I mean, I got to know my classmates really well. My engineering cohort was 35 people, and I'd say that I knew everybody in my graduating class. And if I needed something, I'm sure I could call most of them and ask them for help. Or if I, needed to network into a job somewhere, I'm sure most of them would put in a good recommendation for me. And that is kind of nice that there's a network of 30 plus all the classes that were above and below me that I could reach out to and ask a question. I'll tell you, we did do these trips every year where we went and visited alumni in different cities, and some of my friends actually did get jobs through those alumni connections, and it was really nice and it worked well for them. But yeah, I mean, so was it worth it? For me, it was worth it because I needed that smaller class size and that community. I met my wife because of it, so it's definitely worth it. The value adders I experienced with smaller class sizes. All my classes were taught by professors, which was nice, and my alumni network has worked out fine. I mean, it's not anything more special than any other alumni network, in my opinion, but I am on my reunion committee for my graduating class, and my alumni network is, I'd say that because I went to a private school, a lot of my alumni network isn't necessarily engineering. And maybe if you went to a bigger school, then your alumni network would be more specifically geared towards alumni engineers if you went to a big state school, for example. But my alumni network is mainly just Trinity University grads in general, and that's okay. It's worked out okay for me. And my university has been trying to grow the alumni network for engineers. They have a LinkedIn page for it, and they send out a newsletter and emails, and they try to engage us. And I've been involved in helping engage alumni as well. So, yeah, I mean, is it a deal breaker to go to a smaller school about the alumni network? No. But yeah, no, I had a positive experience. It was worth it to me. It wasn't that much more money. I'd say that if money is an issue and you're trying to make this decision based on money alone, I'd say go to the public university, especially if you could see yourself learning okay in that environment and you like the resources and the facilities that your public university has, and it has a decent reputation, then just go public route if you're money conscious. But if money is not an option, or at least not the main deciding factor, and you could afford to go to private university and you feel like you'd enjoy the environment more, and that was the thing for me, as I felt like I would thrive more in the community of being at Trinity, and that was worth a lot to me. And that's why I ended up going to Trinity. The engineering program was good enough, and I really felt like I would fit in well in the academic community, and it worked out that way for me. And sure enough, I felt the community would be good, and it was good enough that it gave me my wife and the mother of my child. So it all worked out well for me. So that's my take on private universities for engineering. All right, next question. Those that have long since graduated, how many of you have to submit lab reports to your bosses with cover pages, etc.? I've seen an instructor that even goes around to the students' other teachers to demand that they enforce cover sheets on other classes' lab reports. Is this a common thing, or is he being overzealous? Okay, he's being a little bit overzealous by going to other teachers to demand that they enforce cover sheets on other classes' lab reports. But that being said, this guy is doing you a favor. Okay, no, we don't have to submit lab reports with our bosses for cover pages as like an internal thing. But yes, we do submit reports to our clients. I work in consulting, and we submit plans and documents, and all the documents follow a document management plan or procedure for that project, or it's just a company policy. And sure enough, yes, they do come with a cover sheet, and some of them get, based on the type of document, they get sealed or stamped in different ways. And yes, there are things that we have to follow and procedures that we have to follow as part of submitting documents to clients. So yes, this is a completely common thing. And one of the things that this professor is doing you a favor, because the reality is in industry, there's just going to be things that you have to do. You just have to do it because that's what you have to do. And this is one of those things where he's saying that you have to do it, and you're going to do it because you have to do it. And I understand that you're complaining about it because it's, extra work and extra effort, but part of your job in engineering is paying attention to detail, doing things that seem monotonous, so that way that the deliverables and the product that you deliver to your client is consistent and professional. And for you I know it's annoying that you have to do this, but this is normal. And I'll bet I'm not the only one that feels this way, because if we go down into the comment section, it says, every document I submit as a deliverable has a cover page per company policy. I would get used to following document guidelines because every job you ever have will use them. Next one. Another person says, yep, most documents have a cover sheet, revision page, and table of contents. It may not seem like it now, but having these three simple things is very useful. Pretty much every single project I've done at work has resulted in some sort of write-up that has the standardized layout, including a title page, table of contents, etc., though they always supply the template, which makes it a lot easier. I've been in the workplace for nearly 30 years, and I've worked for many companies and for many clients. I've written hundreds of reports, and every single one of them had a cover sheet. So yes, those of us that have long since graduated, yes, we do have to submit cover pages and follow document procedures and formatting guidelines and brand guidelines and stuff like that when we submit our engineering lab reports and engineering reports. So you are not in a weird situation where your professor is just being punitive for no reason. Maybe your professor actually came from industry and they're sharing this experience as a service to you, or maybe they had some former students that said, hey, you should really have your students do this. So, all right, next question is titled, dumb question. Okay. How much math do you use in your day job, and what kind do you use? Dumb question. How much math do you use in your day job? I'm a biochemistry and molecular biology major with a master's in biotechnology. I'm working in industry as a field application scientist, and my current company offers tuition assistance. I am finding my ceiling limited in the science side of things without a PhD degree, so thinking of using the TA to get an engineering master's degree at night, part-time or online, not just for better pay and job security, but actually to learn how to build and create tools and products instead of just using and working with them. I'm leaning towards biomedical engineering since I already have a good amount of the core science for the background, but here's where the dumb question part comes in. I know that engineering curriculums are heavy in math and physics, but once you are out of school, how much actual math do you use day to day, and what kinds exactly? How is it applied? I did well in statistics and was thinking of going down a bioinformatics data science path, but I also remember that calculus kicked my butt in undergrad, which scared me off being a full-fledged engineer at the time. That being said, I'm older and wiser now and willing to bite the bullet with more focus if that's what it takes to succeed. But I'm still curious about how much work on the actual day of an engineer looks like calculus or linear algebra homework. Is it at least fun if it's applied? I like stats and chemistry math because I felt like I could at least connect the math to a bigger picture or real life situation rather than just looking at numbers and equations that led to more numbers in a problem set, which I found pretty dry. You know, I have not had a super technical engineering career, so my opinion is my opinion and my experience is my experience, but I also know about other people's experiences as well. I'd say that I have not done any calculus by hand. I've not done any linear algebra by hand. If I've needed an equation for something, I've looked it up. And most engineering calculations are done in programs that already exist and or spreadsheets that exist to do the calculations. Having the knowledge and the math background helps you do your sanity check and say, okay, is my spreadsheet working correctly? Is my formula working correctly? Does this solution make sense? But as for doing the heavy math work, it's minimal. It's absolutely minimal. The math, this is from talking to engineers that work in my industry, it's pretty minimal, the amount of math that they do. Now, maybe some engineers have jobs where they do heavy math loads and they have to do hand calcs, but I don't know the engineers that do that. At least they don't have to do it because there's usually a program or file that exists to help them do those calculations. And we'd rather use the program or file to do those calculations instead of having people do them hand calc over and over and over again because it's faster. If we're doing the same type of calcs over and over again, it's faster just to use the formulas and the programs. And also it's a lower chance for error because you know that the formula and the spreadsheet and the tool works. So no, it's not, there's not much of heavy math in the job. I've used basic statistics. I do rates for engineering projects, and I've used basic statistics, engineering economics. I've done more of that than anything else, which is just interest rate formulas and that kind of stuff. But yeah, no, I have not had a heavy use of math, and I haven't been a super technical engineer. But again, the people that I have talked to that are technical engineers, they don't do a lot of math. Let's go to the comment section to see if my statement about others is correct. Basic algebra and arithmetic on a daily basis. I've never used calculus a single time. We have software for that kind of stuff. I do most of my math on a spreadsheet or occasionally by hand if I need to solve a circuit or something. Really, that's it for electrical engineering. My dad is a PhD in electrical engineering, and I grew up thinking he was some math wizard. Well, the PhDs might be doing crazy math. Let's be honest here. The research-based stuff, they're going to be doing theory. So yeah, there might be equations and if you're doing research, but not as much if you're in industry. Control engineer here. Use mostly differential equations, linear algebra, transfer functions. Of course, we have software that does most of the job for you, but you still have to understand what you're doing. Yeah, so you take the class, you understand what the software is doing, and it makes the solutions make sense. Because if you don't understand what the math is going on behind it, then you can get a solution that is impractical or unrealistic, and then you wouldn't know that off the top of your head. You wouldn't know, oh, I need to double check my inputs because that is not right. And that doesn't make any sense. So that's really what the math knowledge for is that sanity check whenever you're using your software. All right, guys. Well, those are our college questions of the day. I'm going to take a quick breather and we're going to come back for career questions. All right, and we are back with career questions. All right, guys, let's get into the career questions. All right, so this one is titled A Response to a Boomer Recruiter's Rant on LinkedIn. Oh no, should this have been on LinkedIn Lunatics? No, it shouldn't have, but this is a career question. All right. I came across a LinkedIn post yesterday that left me both bothered and frustrated / kicking myself for not screenshotting it. A corporate recruiter, let's call him a boomer, for the sake of context, went on a rant, backing it up with a screenshot of someone's LinkedIn profile featuring 20 plus work experiences. His main reason, he wouldn't consider a candidate unless they'd been with an employer for at least 4 to 5 years. An employer. According to him, 2 years is a blip, and 3 years barely scratches the surface. Now let's get real. In this era of COVID, layoffs, companies folding, and whatnot, job stability is often a luxury many of us don't have. I, for one, have been laid off 3 times in the last 4 years due to reasons entirely out of my control: company shutdown, office closures, financial struggles of the firm, etc. Yet this recruiter, perhaps echoing a boomer sentiment and seemingly oblivious to the current job market dynamics, sounded almost shaming in his tone. It's disheartening, especially when this view is echoed in his recruiting circle. So here's my 2 cents to him and those who share his views. I wish I could have stayed longer at my jobs, climbing up the ladder, but sometimes life has other plans. We, especially the younger generations, are navigating a world that's rapidly changing. A little compassion and understanding wouldn't hurt. As for my job history, I've had 4 different jobs with multiple promotions at each. It's not about the length of time spent at the job, but the growth and experience gained. And I sympathize with this person. I'd say yes, especially if your career is less than 10 years. Well, I'd say less than less than 4 to 5 years, then it obviously would be it with what's gone on in the last, I say, since 2020. It's been the time of people leaving jobs with the Great Resignation. The amount of the incentives for job hopping right now are just so great. I mean, that it is hard for companies to find good talent, and whenever they find it, they're willing to pay up for it. And also people are putting up with less things with jobs. The market around 401ks instead of pensions incentivizes people to job hop, and companies do so much to suppress the salaries of the people that they have in hand, and they'll pay more money to hire new talent off the street. So it just makes sense that employees will jump around. That is just reality. The best way to make more money is to job hop nowadays, and there's not really much of a incentive to stay at a current employer, especially whenever money is the priority. That being said, if you have a 20-year career and you never stayed anywhere for 4 or 5 years, that would be a little bit of a red flag to me. But yeah, if you're early in your career, it's unreasonable to expect somebody to have been at the same place for 4 or 5 years. I've been at Zachary for 5 years, so that's it's a long time. And I guess I've been at an employer for long enough to have met this recruiter's requirements to be a recruited employee. I'd say that 2 years is a blip and 3 years barely scratches the surface. I'd say that 6 months is a blip. 2 years is long enough to really get into a really good rhythm at a company, and 3 years is a good stint at an employer. I think, and then 4 to 5 years is definitely whenever, if you've been somewhere for 4 or 5 years, and that's a good time to at least start looking and considering, because especially if you're 4 to 5 years into your career and you've been with one employer that entire time, then you're probably, even if you've gotten really good raises, starting salaries in college are 60 for college grads, $40,000 to $70,000 depending on the industry. So say you start at $65,000 to $70,000. Even 5 years into your career, if you've gotten 10% raises every single year, you're still barely making $100,000 a year, and you probably can jump somewhere to get at least a 30, 40, 50% bump from that if you've developed really good skills. So yeah, if you've been an employer for 3 years, that's whenever you've kind of gotten enough experience. I feel like it's a decent time to start looking. And if you've been there for 5 years, then you definitely should be at least heavily considering the value of potentially jumping to another employer. So yeah, this is a little bit of a, I guess, boomer sentiment, but my boomer father encourages me to look for new jobs and to know my worth, and to look at the market for what people with my years of experience are. So not every boomer has this mentality. There's some good boomers out there. Let's not label all the boomers negatively. But as for your job history, you've had 4 different jobs with multiple promotions to each. That's great. I'd say, you say it's not about the length of time spent at a job, but the growth and experience gained. I'd say that it is about the growth and experience gained at the job, and you have to have a little bit of length of time spent at a job to get that growth and experience. But hey, that's a good rant. I like it. Very well said. And hey, job hopping is okay. That is the way. Employers don't want us to job hop. They also don't want us to talk about how much money we make. Plenty of people in the employers and in the industry will say things because it doesn't benefit them for you to hop from job to job and make more money each time along the way. It doesn't benefit them for you to tell your colleagues how much you make, so that way they know that they're that they're underpaid and undervalued. It doesn't help them. So they're going to continue to perpetuate these kind of things. This guy's a recruiter. He probably hates it because he can't find people that have the tenure and experience that he can make a judgment. But I'm sure that other recruiters can look at somebody's resume and make a good judgment about whether or not they'd be a good fit. And yeah, I mean, if that's a company that expects people to stay there for 4 or 5 plus years, first of all, that's an unrealistic expectation nowadays, in my opinion. I'd say that, you know, there's other ways that you can manage that at a company. Like, for example, you could have a vesting schedule where, you know, company match vests after a certain amount of time. So you ideally, most people are staying with your company until at least that amount of time, but then expect a lot of them to leave exactly after that amount of time as well, because that's just going to be a thing in their head. Hey, I vested. All right, bye. That's just a cost of doing business. And that's the world that we live in. And the good companies and the companies that are going to have the staying power are going to be the companies that know how to navigate that. So that's my take, and good post, Mr. or Mrs. Monster Div on Reddit. All right, next question is management track for chemical engineering. Hi, I'm currently a junior college student majoring in chemical engineering, not in the US, and I'm hoping to enter the management track in a top engineering firm, and I'm seeking advice from people from this industry. After much consideration and research on choosing which career path to take, I've decided to get my master's in battery-related lab and enter the industry and rise through the ranks to get there. I've also considered PhDs, but a lot of people, even here in this sub, have been telling me that if you're not determined enough or enthusiastic enough about the subject, it's going to be a torment. Also, the monetary gain from getting a PhD is not going to be greater than the sacrifice made during the PhD years. Yes. However, I've decided upon my master's because I hope my master's experience will, in the future, provide me with an advantage when it comes to promotion in the industry, as it is proof that I have knowledge in my field. Okay, especially if you're passionate about battery-related labs, then that's fine. However, an MBA is not a viable option for me because the cost of an MBA at the top 10 universities would be too high. Okay. My ultimate goal in terms of my career is to reach a senior management position, example, executives, in a global firm, which I'm hoping to reach by the age of early 50s. These are great goals, and good that you're setting these goals. One of the reasons why I've decided on this path is, 1, I do not think I'm going to survive in academia. Okay, good to know about that yourself. 2, management in a chemical engineering field is something that I'm happy to be working for. And 3, I would want to make an above average salary. And 4, the fact that I'm trilingual, wow, look at you, would actually give me an advantage when working for the industry. So I'm hoping to get some advice on whether the path to reach management position is a reasonable path to undertake. If not, I'd be very happy to hear other ways to reach my goal. Any tips, suggestions, advice is very much appreciated. Thanks in advance. Okay, so I think you have some great goals, and it's great to set these goals and know that you're working towards these things really early, and then set intermediate goals to help yourself get there. I think that this is a great mentality to have, and to know this going ahead. I'd say the fact that you want to get them, you saying you want to get your master's because you hope it will help provide you proof that you have knowledge in your field. I'd say that you don't need a master's to demonstrate that you have knowledge in your field. Also, getting an academic master's does carve you into a specific niche. And most people that I know that get academic masters really generally want to go a more technical route with their career. So I wouldn't necessarily get the master's for that reason, especially if you want to go in management. I mean, you can go like technical management, but you said you want to be an executive, and executives have broad experiences and broad knowledge. So I would argue instead, if you really want to go get the executive route, I would say, one sec. I would say start working as soon as possible. Get your foot in the door and get that work experience. Those 2+ years that you're going to spend getting your master's are just 2 more years that you're not working and building your business resume with your business acumen. Your business acumen is what gets you those roles as an executive. You have to have some technical knowledge, enough technical knowledge to know what you're talking about, but it's business acumen that you have whenever you're a executive. And many companies have rotational management programs specifically for the engineers to rotate them through a bunch of different roles within the company, and then they kind of get exposure to leadership in the company because they're in this rotational program. And then the rotational program theoretically follows you throughout your career with that company as they move you up strategically as you're growing. That's something that I would spend more time trying to focus on getting, is access to a rotational program and a leadership program, a program designed specifically to develop leaders within a company. That's the kind of program that I think would be more valuable to you than necessarily a technical master's. Uh, Again, you could get the technical master's, but I don't feel like you need to. And that's 2 years that you're not growing your career and you're not making money. And that's you want to make more money. You want to be an executive because you want to make more money, you and everybody else. But then start making money. The over the length of your career, the amount of money, especially if you want eventually are going to be an executive, that means you're going to have a point in your career where you have an extreme growth in your earning potential. The master's doesn't do that for you. It's the other things that you've done working for companies. I'd say I have similar aspirations, and here's what I did. I got a job where I got access. My first role within my company, it was not super technical. It was technical enough, but it put me in a position where I was close to the people that were making decisions. I worked in proposal engineering, supporting engineering proposals and then other proposals at the core of my company's business. And part of my job was interfacing with the leaders in the company that made decisions on pricing and how we approach trying to win work. And then that exposure then got me exposure to leadership in the company. And they said, hey, Daniel, would you be interested in doing something more commercial? And commercial is all of the aspects of projects and that is not the technical. So all the financial decision making and contract management, all that kind of stuff. These are things that executives are making decisions all the time. So I moved into commercial management, and now I'm still in commercial management, trying to feel out what I want to do next. I probably want to go into project management to get an experience of how our projects run and have that demonstrated experience on my resume that shows people, yes, I know how these projects work and how to run a project. And then after that, I probably want to go somewhere into operations management where I'm managing an office and managing profit and loss for a section of a business unit. And then that's how you get your path into executive leadership, is you get that more broad experience and that exposure to people that can be advocates for you in your career development. And then that's how you kind of get that faster growth into executive management. It's not carving yourself into a technical niche and then trying to get promotions up the technical ladder. So, I mean, this is my opinion. This is my view on the matter. So maybe let's consult the people of Reddit to see what they think about your goal and your pursuit of executive leadership. Make your goals known once per year. Yeah, you just got to be annoying about once you start working. Again, start working as soon as possible, and then be almost borderline annoying. These are my goals. I want to be an executive leader. Here's the goals that I have in the immediate time to help get me there. Manager, what do you think? My company does a performance and development program where you're going through your goals with your manager and then your skip level manager every single year to make sure that you're actually tracking towards your goals, and that's how they also assign promotions and pick people for new roles. So something to keep in mind. This person said is rotational programs. Yes, I said rotational programs. Yeah, rotational programs, 8 to 24 months at a plant or at a facility, and you could do all different types of things. Big companies have rotational programs. Another person asked you if the stress of upper management is actually worth it. And here's my comment. Do you need a master's to break into the industry? If you get an entry level job, that's more time with you working for the company versus losing 2 years of company tenure to your master's program. Someone else said rotational program. That's a good idea. Management needs to have a good understanding of the technical, but you don't need to be an expert. But getting a master's in engineering is what usually people are trying to do to become a technical expert or an SME do. So, yeah, that's my take on going the route of a master's to get into management track. I don't think that that's the best investment of your time, but best wishes to you. Next question: experience needed for internship. Says, I was invited to apply for an internship, but have absolutely zero experience. The qualifications say things like ability to apply basic engineering, scientific, or physics principles to solve technical problems. And I've done the basic physics and math courses, but it's always just standard textbook problems. I've never really applied anything really. I've just done homework and tests that feel really detached from the real world. I'm in between community college and university, and will start at university in a few weeks, and definitely feel unqualified for anything, but I've always thought internships were the best way to learn. Should I go for the internship without feeling I meet the basic qualifications? Do you already have these skills already and I'm behind? How else could I get them? This is for summer 2024. Thanks. All right, so this was asked in January. So this is for summer 2024. Okay. Um, Companies don't expect you to have a bunch of experience when coming in. If you went, I'm assuming that you've done some class projects. I know you said homework, but maybe if you've done some projects at school at all, that maybe you could put those on your resume, or any personal projects that you've done that demonstrate physics principles, or just anything that sounds engineering-y projects that you've done. Maybe throw those on your resume if you don't have any other work experience. But yeah, I had a section on my resume as an engineering student that was called engineering design experience, or something like that. And I had every single semester of college in my engineering program, we had to take a class called engineering design, where we did a project of some sort, where we applied a concept that we learned that year. And so I had a list of like 8 projects, and I would actually pick between different projects and highlight different ones based on the internship or job that I was applying for. And so maybe if you don't have any projects that you've done through school, then maybe pursue a personal project, look up some fun projects for engineering students on Google, and then do one. Like, oh, we did a project where we had to launch a water balloon and build our own catapult, and then we modeled it in MATLAB and modeled it in Excel, and it's just basically what kind of equation, basic physics mechanics equations. And so yeah, I mean, there's little things that you can do that just put something on your resume. Should you go for the internship without feeling you meet the basic qualifications? I'd say yes. I mean, first of all, you probably do meet those basic qualifications. Maybe you're being a little bit hard on yourself. And do we already have those skills and you're behind? I don't think so. Especially people likely just have those skills to the extent that they've been exposed to projects like that, or maybe they were in a rocket club or something in high school. But no, you're not behind. And just go ahead and apply to the internships and think about that question. Maybe do one personal project so that you can at least talk. And in an interview, you might get asked, what are some cool projects that you've done? Or they might ask about how you worked in a team with other people. So you maybe interviewed have an answer prepared for those basic interview questions, other interview questions to prepare for, like, well, what's the time you dealt with conflict and that stuff. But yeah, you should be able to talk about doing a project. And if you haven't done a project through school yet, I'm actually a little bit surprised by that. But there is one thing that is a good piece of advice that somebody else said, and I'm just going to share it on the screen. Never let vague, meaningless job description lines stop you from trying something. That's for sure. That's for sure. I mean, I've applied for plenty of jobs where random lines that somebody from recruiting put on a piece of paper because they copied it from another job application were not something that I necessarily qualified for. Hey, just apply. There's nothing that should prevent you from applying for internships, and you were invited to apply. That's a good thing. So go ahead and apply. That person definitely thought that you were qualified, so go ahead and at least apply. All right. Next question. How hard is it to get a job without internships? I'm currently a junior in chemical engineering and torn on whether I should continue research over the summer or should do an interview/co-op. I've been with my current research group since last summer and love what I'm doing. I'm considering grad school, but I'm extremely uncertain. I'm worried this summer may be my last chance for an internship, so if I spend the summer doing research instead, I will have no industry experience when I graduate. If I decide to stick with research but would prefer industry by the time I graduate, how likely would it be that I even could get a job? You could get a job, but it'll be harder. I mean, it will be harder. I mean, maybe you get lucky and you have a circumstance that works out for you and you get networked really well into a job, but it sounds like you're concerned about that. So maybe you don't already have that network. But yeah, it will be harder to get a job without any internships on your resume. The company that I worked for fresh out of school, the guy who ran their intern program famously said, "I don't care about your research. I want to see that you've had some work experience." So I'm glad that you love what you're doing. Could you continue doing research with your research group after the summer? Like, you absolutely have to stick with them over the summer? I feel like they would understand if you got an internship, especially if they wanted you to get a job. And you have the research on your resume, so that's good for grad school. If you want to go work in industry, then the other thing that an internship could do is it could also generate a job offer for you. Like, for example, whenever I interned the summer after my junior year, I had a job offer by the end of the first semester of my senior year from the company I interned for. So it's definitely worth pursuing the internship. It'll definitely make it easier. You can still get a job without an internship. I know people that did, and they didn't even have research experience. They still got a job. They've had a great career, but it did take them longer. And that was just their experience. I'm sure there's people that don't have an internship experience. In fact, I know somebody that had no internship experience, no research experience. They graduated with a near perfect GPA and they got a job fresh out of school. And that was their experience. Everybody's experience is different, but getting the internship will improve your chances and improve your odds of getting a job sooner. So I would say definitely get the internship. Let's see what everybody else says. I strongly recommend all students get internships in industry, regardless if you want to work in that industry or not after graduation. It will greatly improve your chances of getting work after graduation. Doing research doesn't count. I've been directly mentoring interns for the last 20 years. Somebody says, I wouldn't say that doing research doesn't count, just that it tends to mean you get R&D jobs after graduation. And then somebody else countered that, and I like the counter saying R&D positions for new grads are rare. If you intend on going PhD, then they are fine, but most companies hiring new grads want internship experience, at least from what I've seen, and they're usually not hiring them from R&D, especially if they're hiring undergrads. But you never know. I mean, there are different circumstances. Somebody said an internship will help, but the difficulty in getting a job post-graduation is very location dependent and personal circumstance dependent. I agree with that. I mean, everybody's circumstance is different. I mean, there's a lot of factors, but definitely having an internship on your experience will definitely improve your chances of getting a job. All right, folks. Well, that was this episode of Engineering Success. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I enjoyed recording it. I enjoyed checking in with you guys. Before I go, make sure to check out my friends at Magic Mind. My code again is Daniel D20, and you can get there at magicmind.com/DanielD, and you can get your Magic Mind. So thank you, Magic Mind, for the support. Thank you, John Ott and Leroy Jenkins, for being my top tier supporters. If you like the episode, make sure to leave it a 5-star on your preferred podcast platform. Comment down below on YouTube if you have questions, disagreements, thoughts, opinions, feelings. Let me know how you're feeling. It helps me out, helps the engagement, helps with the algorithm. We have 740 subscribers on YouTube, which is pretty close to our goal of 1,000. So thanks for your help getting there. And yeah, life is good. Life is good. Oh, also, for those of you who don't know, I got a new job. More about that next episode. Talk to you later. Bye. I'm miscommunicating. I just made a pilot, then they threw me on the stations. I'm not complaining. I'm not complaining. My thoughts get complicated. I cannot explain in lameness. Never losing focus because I ain't chasing payments. Still playing in the basement while I'm working on arrangements. They heard the kid in 50 countries. Thank God that's amazing. But I'd rather thank Spotify. They put me on the station.